Exercises. When we hear that word, we usually think of jogging or working out in the gym, right? We associate exercises with improving our body function. But today, you're going to learn about different kinds of exercises that will actually improve your memory. Now, you may think that losing your memory is inevitable as you get older. But there is a way to reverse that trend. And our guest, Dr. Arlene Taylor, is going to show you how. Dr. Arlene Taylor, welcome to It Is Written. It's a pleasure to have you on our program today. Many of us do notice our brains going downhill at some point as we get older. Why is that?
Well, in the first place, your brain going downhill as you age is not part of the process of aging if you are healthy and if you are doing things to keep your brain healthy. When you look at all the factors that impact aging, less than 20% of brain function has anything to do with the actual process of aging, but it certainly can have a lot to do with not taking care of your brain properly.
Our brains are pretty complex, aren't they? And in the first chapter of Age-Proofing Your Brain, you have suggestions on how we can expand our knowledge.
The brain is complex. Researchers believe it is the most extraordinary, complex organ in our known universe, and that's saying quite a bit. Researchers are learning how better to take care of this amazing piece of neurological real estate. And there are some basic things that, you probably even heard something about growing up, but that we have not realized until recently how key they are, such as getting enough sleep, because during sleep, the brain heals itself, it repairs itself. It puts information that you've learned in the last 24 hours into long-term memory. It does amazing things. Creates neurotrophic food to actually feed the neurons. So sleep is critical. And we are a sleep-deprived generation because there's so much electronically going on that people tend to stay up and play games and tweet and text and email and actually sometimes on the phone talk to their friends. So sleep is really critical. And then there's exercise, mental exercise, keeping your brain challenged, and physical exercise to keep it healthy.
Now, you also advise that we should examine our perspectives on aging and brain function. Why is that?
So there's all kinds of myths of aging. Old people are all the same. No, actually, we get more different as we age because our thoughts even change some of the nerve pathways in the brain. Nobody ever thinks the same thoughts, so we actually become more different as we get older.
You see the words, "I can't," as a negative mental attitude. Why is that?
So if I say to you, Gary, don't think about the white bear, what are you going to think about? The white bear. Because that will now go into working memory right here in your prefrontal cortex, and that's all you want to think about. So when you give somebody a negative instruction, you tell them what not to do, but you do not tell them what to do. And the brain needs to be told what to do. Well, a positive mindset is also only to say what you want. So let's say that I weigh 130 pounds and I want to weigh 120 pounds. So you say, I don't want to weigh 130 pounds. I don't like being this heavy. The picture in your brain is of being exactly at 130 pounds. So you never talk about what you no longer want to do. You only talk about what you do want to do. So I would say to my brain, as of now, my exercise, my sleep, and my food intake is moderating so that I weigh 120 pounds. Now, I don't weigh 120 pounds yet, but I'm telling my brain I weigh 120 pounds because now it knows what the goal is and it knows it can do it. And that follows for everything.
And you urge people to write and read affirmations. Tell us more about that.
Well, affirmations is just a word, a label for exactly what we've been talking about. speaking in positives, telling your brain exactly what you want it to do, thanking it for helping you do what you do. And it is the programming language of the subconscious. The brain runs a lot on, what it assumes you want it to do by how you talk to yourself and others. So affirmations create in your brain a picture of what you want to have happen. And these first two layers don't use language, but they can see the pictures that are created in your brain by the language that goes on in this top layer. And when they see those pictures, they tend to follow the picture. So a mother says to her child, "Don't touch the stove." So the very first picture that pops up in working memory is touching the stove. And so most kids at least once will touch the stove because that's the first picture. And even though you said don't, the brain is really not developed enough to understand that, oh, what they just said is not what they want me to do. So the positive way to say that would be, keep your hand away from the stove. Avoid getting burned, because the picture is now the stove and my hand instead of touching the stove. And you do that for everything and you're just way more effective. It's don't forget your homework, so the kid forgets the homework. Remember your homework. Put your homework by the door so you remember your homework. And it follows through with almost anything we do in life.
Relaxation, you say, can release a lot of our tensions. What types of relaxation?
Depends what your brain likes to do, Gary. There's all kinds of ways to relax. Now, here's the deal. You could not go to the gym for 24 hours and pump iron and keep doing it. Your body would not be able to do that. Well, your brain cannot keep going for 24 hours at a high thought level either. It gets tired. It needs a break. So sometime, maybe growing up you heard the old phrase, a change is as good as a rest. So the brain, all brains love variety. So when you've done something for a while, give it a break. Take 5 or 10 minutes and do something else. Do something fun. Get up, move around. Do some brain breaths, whatever.
Now, what about EQ, emotional intelligence? Can that be changed as well?
So emotional intelligence is now thought to be worth 80% of your success in life, with IQ only offering 20%. There are many, many people with really high IQs that are not successful because they have low emotional intelligence. So some of the hallmarks of low EQ are taking things personally, not understanding that when what someone else says to you comes out of their brain, not yours, and you take it personally and you waste energy getting upset. So, not taking things personally, not jumping to conclusions. Sometimes we get a little teeny piece of information and we take this big leap and think that's what that means, and it's totally erroneous. So avoid jumping to conclusions. Avoid overreacting. Somebody will say something and it's just this big deal. It's just something that came out of their brain. And the research strongly suggests that you get your IQ potential from your opposite gender parent. So Gary, you would have gotten your IQ from your mother. I got my IQ from my father. Now, having said that, eventually you reach a level at which it would be really hard for you to go beyond in terms of IQ, but there is a range there. And the research is people can raise their IQ from 5 to 30 points depending where they start. So it's not such a hard and fast number as we thought. But nevertheless, it's about 20% of your success. So it's worth working on your EQ because you don't inherit it. It's something you build yourself, and the sky's the limit.
Dr. Taylor, you also point out sunlight as being beneficial for our brains. What do you mean by that?
So I try to walk every morning, 20 or 30 minutes, when the sun is just coming up, so I don't have any really, strong rays of the sun, but it does a lot. It helps your skin convert substances to vitamin D. but it also releases melatonin. And melatonin is what helps you with your circadian cycle, and it helps you with your sleep. So you put a person in a totally dark room, and they really would not functionally last very well for very long, because we do need light, just like plants. You put them in an absolutely dark room and they'll die.
You claim that honing our spirituality, strengthening our relationship with God, can sustain our brain in a significant way. Can you elaborate on that?
Spirituality is interesting because as you hone your spirituality, especially from a Christian perspective, it's very much like meditative prayer. It actually benefits your prefrontal cortex. It can actually expand and grow parts of the brain. So since human beings are relational and spiritual, it's important, in my brain's opinion, to hone that spirituality, to allow yourself to feel awe. I can do that when I go out in nature or see a fabulous sunset. Just be grateful that you're alive and let yourself experience that awe. And there are some people who really don't want to have much to do with religion and yet consider themselves very, very spiritual. From a Christian perspective, of course, the ideal is to hone your spirituality and then meet with people who have similar beliefs so that you can do your social connection and your reinforcement at the same time.
And then there's flexibility. You have several specific suggestions about that.
Well, in a storm, the trees that are not flexible often are uprooted or broken off. So as we move through life, Gary, nothing is predictable. I mean, change is predictable. You know that today is not going to be the same as yesterday, and tomorrow will be different from today. And brains that cannot be flexible find life very difficult, because as we get older, there's some things that we can't quite do at the level we did before. You know, when you're 80, you may not be able to walk as far as you could when you were 18. And we need to be able to find ways to easily adjust, still do what we need to do, and age gracefully. And flexibility is all about aging gracefully. You know, one of the ways that you prevent falling as you get older in life is by continually doing exercises that help you with your balance. Now, your brain works best in balance. And what that means is everything we've talked about: sleep, drinking enough water, having physical exercise, mental exercise, eating the right kinds of food. You want that all in balance because the brain works best in balance.
We live in an age of travel. How does travel and jet lag impact the brain?
Traveling, and you're crossing time zones, and everything is changing. It can mess up your circadian rhythm because, you know, your brain already knows it's time to go to bed, now it's time to wake up, and all of a sudden they've been flying for 14, 15 hours and you should be going to bed and it's all light outside. So there are little things that you can do to help with that. I'll tell you what I do because it works for me. I arrive at the airport, and as soon as I board the plane, before I have to turn off my iPhone, I look up the world clock and I find out at this moment what time is it at my destination. And then I actually change my wristwatch and I begin living my life at that moment as if I'm already on the time where I will be when I land. And I rarely experience jet lag because I'm telling my brain, literally as well as looking at my watch, all right, brain, it is now 2 p.m. where we're going. So just make sure that you know that because we're going to have a little dinner and then we're going to go to sleep. And I'm resetting. You reset your circadian clock while you're sleeping. So I've told my brain what's going to happen. I'm actually doing the behavior, and I almost never have jet lag, and I'm very grateful for that.
You've shared the importance of having a healthy brain. You've shared ways that we can ensure we do have a healthy brain. Would it be fair then to say that having a healthy brain is a choice we make?
Yes, I absolutely believe that a healthy brain is our choice, with a caveat or two, meaning that occasionally people are born with brain disabilities. They didn't ask for them, they did nothing to cause them, and so the brain will never be quite as healthy in one or two aspects as it might have been had there not been that little glitch, if you want to call it that. And occasionally there'll be an accident. A person will have a traumatic brain injury. They didn't do anything, wasn't their choice. It just happens. It's sometimes part of life. But outside of those kinds of things, I believe it's absolutely a choice to take care of your brain and do what research is showing helps you to have a good brain for a long time. Now, more than half the factors that have been found to impact the process of aging are within your partial, if not complete, control. And that's pretty staggering. But there's more. Recently, researchers have come out with this statement. 70% of how well you live and how long you live is within your hands. That is such good news. So that makes me want to live at least 122 years, 164 days at good mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And I'm planning and I'm working on that to the best of my ability, because you see sometimes these older people whose bodies are actually doing pretty well, but the brain's not so good, which means they really can't use their bodies effectively because everything starts in the brain.
You've shared some valuable and life-changing information with us. Can you summarize what we can do to have a healthy brain?
Well, there's a few things that I think are slam dunks. Positive mindset. We talked about that earlier. You tell your brain what you are doing as if it's a done deal. You stop talking about things you don't want to do. You avoid using negatives. You work with your brain. I wake up in the morning and I thank my brain for everything they helped me do the day before and what it's going to help me do today. Plenty of rest. Every brain needs an optimum amount. Figure that out for your brain. I know for me it's 9 hours. Physical exercise. Dr. Candace Pert said 20 minutes of aerobic exercise in the morning boots up your brain and will help to burn fat all day long. So every morning, often when I travel, but certainly when I'm home, I am out doing my walk first thing in the morning. Mental stimulation, keeping your brain alive and challenged and stimulated, and some of it in fun ways. I personally like to play the piano and the organ and vibes and my ukulele, and that for me is fun mental exercise. And I have on my iPhone a number of different kinds of word games. So as we talked earlier, if I'm in my 5 hours of staying awake on the plane, I'm playing my word games and challenging my brain and keeping it alive and alert and interested. Plenty of water. Your brain is more than 3/4 water. You need water, and I mean water. Sometimes people say, well, I drink a lot of juice, and I like sodas, and there's some nice sugary drinks that I enjoy. I don't put any of that in my brain and body. I want just pure water. Now people say, okay, how much is that? Is that 6 glasses of water? Is it 15 glasses of water? Well, I'll tell you what researchers at Stanford suggest. When little children are first learning to use the toilet, they always want to turn around and look and see what they did. So the researchers say, when you go to the bathroom and urinate, look at your urine. If you are getting enough water all day long, you will have at least 2 very pale urines a day. And that's so easy to do, because especially when I'm traveling, if I go to the bathroom and I go, ooh, that urine is a little too yellow, then I just on purpose drink extra glasses of water. And it's the way you know that you're giving your brain what it needs. And finally, nutrition. There are other things, but you asked for the key ones. So nutrition is huge. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, whole grains, I don't give my brain white rice or white sugar or, white flour or products made with that, which means I rarely do desserts, because refined sugar is not good for the brain. It's a very toxic substance. I eat a handful of nuts every day because that's good. Almost every day I will have some avocado because that type of fat is very good. So you want healthy, complex carbs, healthy fats, plant-based preferably, and go really easy on animal proteins. There's so many wonderful protein sources in legumes and beans and so on, which basically describes a lot about what we call Mediterranean cuisine. And when, as we've mentioned before, we're looking at what's keeping the blue zone people living so long, it's basically just the kind of things that we've been talking about today.
Dr. Arlene Taylor, it's been a pleasure to have you on our program today, and I'd like to wish you God's blessing and all the very best in your endeavours.
I appreciate the opportunity because I love to talk about the brain.